Hi there, and welcome to The Daily Gardener, an almanac of garden history, literature, and small botanical joys. I'm Jennifer Eadling, and today is April 2nd. Early April can be misleading. The ground is still wet, the air still sharp enough to make staying inside feel reasonable, and it doesn't always look like anything is happening yet. And that's when it's easy to assume nothing has begun. But some things in the garden don't wait for comfort. They arrive low to the soil, they bloom quickly, they pass through on days that don't invite lingering. If the weather has kept you indoors, it's possible to step outside one morning and feel a small jolt of surprise. Something was here, and now it isn't. Maybe it's daffodils that you missed. Maybe the scilla, maybe some hyacinths. April opens like that, quietly, briefly, and without asking if anyone is ready. Here's today's garden history. It was on this day in 1647 that the German naturalist Maria Sibylla Merian was born. Maria was born in Frankfurt am Main, a river city in central Germany. And before anyone called her pioneering, Maria was simply a girl in a house full of grown-up expectations and a private fascination that she didn't quite ask permission to keep. Maria raised silkworms. As a teenager, quietly, insistently, she watched them move through their whole transformation: egg to larva to pupa to adult. In her time, many people believed insects came from mud and rot, appearing as if the world simply coughed them up. Maria didn't argue. She just observed and drew what she saw. Maria's kitchen became a laboratory. Jars, boxes, nettle leaves brought in from the garden, paper curling at the corners. The life cycles created her daily routine. Moths that emerged at night meant late nights. Caterpillars that refused the wrong leaf meant going back out again to find the right one. And that, right there, is where Maria's gift began to show. Creatures are particular. Many caterpillars are specialists, bound to a single host plant and unable to live without it. Maria's botanical illustrations didn't just show a butterfly. They showed a butterfly belonging, fed by a plant, hidden by it, and shaped by it. To Maria, a garden was not just decoration, but a relationship. In 1699, when Maria was 52, she did something almost unthinkable. She sold her belongings, gathered what she could, and set sail for Suriname, on the northeast coast of South America. She traveled with her youngest daughter, Dorothea Maria. Maria wasn't chasing comfort. She was following the work. In Suriname, she listened carefully to the knowledge of indigenous and enslaved people, recording local names and uses of plants, while colonial merchants fixated on sugar. Maria returned to Europe with drawings that felt different. The entire life of an insect placed exactly where it belonged, right by the plant it needed to live. Sometimes forgotten, sometimes rediscovered, but precise enough that later naturalists could use her drawings to identify species long after Maria was gone. Near the end of her life, between 1716 and 1717, Maria was visited by her friend, the artist George Gazelle, and by Gazelle's remarkable companion, Peter the Great. After Maria died, Peter sent an agent to purchase all of her remaining watercolors, hundreds of them, so that they could travel to St. Petersburg and be part of his private collection. And they remain there to this day. And it was on this day in 1998 that the gardeners Beth Chatto and Christopher Lloyd saw their correspondence published in a book called Dear Friend and Gardener, Letters on Life and Gardening. By the time these letters were written, across 1996 and 1997, both gardeners had already settled into themselves. Beth had shaped beauty out of Essex dry, flinty country in the east of England, and Christopher had turned Great Dixter, an old house and garden in Sussex, into a place of bold experiment, color, exuberance, and risk. And yet, here they are, writing back and forth, like people who trust each other enough not to perform. The weather, the failures, what's thriving, what's sulking, what's been eaten. But what stays with the reader is the rhythm. A year turning in real time, letter by letter, and two voices steady at the center of it. And you can almost see them. An envelope opened at the potting bench, mud on the thumb, and a reply before the kettle boils. Some garden books make you want to tidy. This one makes you want to keep writing back. In today's Unearthed Words, we hear an excerpt from the American columnist Leonard Harman Robbins and his book, Cure It with a Garden. Leonard was a New York Times columnist and a writer who could bring the everyday into focus with a little humor and a clean, well-placed line. Here are two sentences that are classic Leonard. Of course, not all lovers of flowers can labor in the soil. Some of them haven't the right kind of shoes for it. And then this, Spring herself is speaking. Leonard wrote, "There is one thing about it," says Spring, as she mops her fevered brow at the end of another overtime day. "I don't have to exert any powers of salesmanship to dispose of my goods. My customers like every article that I display. They are already persuaded." Leonard had a city address and a mind that always leaned toward soil. Just that. It's time to grow that garden library with today's book, Writing the Garden by Elizabeth Barlow Rogers. This book is part of Garden Writers Week, a gathering of voices who turned gardening into a writing life. Writing the Garden is an anthology of writers across centuries that Elizabeth chose because they stayed close to the work. Hands in the soil, eyes on change, and pens moving slowly enough to notice. Elizabeth's book grew as part of a 2011 exhibition at the New York Society Library, where garden books themselves were treated as objects of care. Not instruction, not authority, just people writing down what happened when they paid attention in the garden. And finally, here's something sweet to ignite the little botanic spark in your heart. It was on this day in 1906 that Helen Smith Bevington was born in Afton, New York, a poet with a gardener's sense of humor. Helen's writing lands well in spring, when gardeners drift almost helplessly toward seed packets and compost piles. Helen once wrote, "Gardeners are happy people. Come spring, and like lovers, lunatics, and poets, here come the gardeners, especially the organic gardeners, with their love of compost heaps and their lore of ladybugs." Helen watched neighbors go half feral for robins and laughing over steaming piles. Helen wrote of gardens as work and laughter as one of the tools. As we close the show today, remember April has started, but it hasn't settled yet. Some days still feel raw, The ground gives in places, but then closes again. Early blooms come and go quietly, low to the soil. They're easy to miss. Blue that appears and disappears, white that holds for a moment and then doesn't. The air can still feel sharp, and the beds can still look mostly empty. And yet, something is moving just below the surface. This part of spring doesn't make much noise. It doesn't wait for conditions to improve. But it happens, whether anyone is watching or not. Thanks for listening to The Daily Gardener. And remember, for a happy, healthy life, garden every day.